Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a trainer who's using an anti-meta moveset to get wins in the Master League. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Emmy Emmerhauser, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, this trainer is using Kyurem White, but instead of using Ice Fang, which is the recommended moveset, they are trying out Dragon Breath. Now, Ice Fang does offer a lot of neutral play against the fairy types, but in this particular instance, Emmy is using it to try and target down opposing Kyurems and Palkia. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Leading Kyurem into Landorus. Opponent is going to switch out expecting Ice Fang. They send in their Kyurem Black, and unfortunately for this opponent, they are now getting fully farmed down. Fusion Flare is going to be shielded. Kyurem has farmed up a lot of energy. The opponent can only get to one nuke move here. They're going to end up going for the double Fusion Bolt, but a Fusion Bolt, not a particularly threatening attack. So this is a pretty comfortable no shield. Kyurem White also does exit with quite a bit of energy in this matchup. Opponent is going to send out Dialga. Dialga immediately answered with the Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare is going to connect. There's some nice damage, and out comes Landorus. Landorus farming up, going for the Sandsear Storm, but a nice catch by the opponent, able to catch the Sandsear Storm onto their own Landorus. So the opponent is now debuffed. That means the Stone Edge will not be enough to knock out here, and Emmy knows it as well. Very confident, immediate no shield. Stone Edge not going to KO, and now Emmy gets the return fire with the Stone Edge. Stone Edge into the Landorus is going to be shielded. The opponent is going to fire off a last second charge attack. So they will be able to KO here with the double resisted Sandsear Storm, but now Kyurem hits the field. Opponent pivots out into Dialga, and this is just going to give farm to Rhyperior. Rhyperior can commit the shield, because even though Rhyperior is going to take super effective damage from a Sandsear Storm, this is not Sandsear Storm range, so this is a very comfortable win for the Rhyperior. Rhyperior tanks the Sandsear, gets to fire off the Rock Wrecker. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Moving into game number 2, oh my goodness, the Kyurem White Mirror, but this one is on Dragon Breath, and look at the difference in the health bars. Dragon Breath shredding the opponent. Fusion Flare is going to be shielded up. The opponent, I mean, they can get the shield back, but all they're doing by staying in this matchup is just making sure that Emmy exits with quite a bit of energy. In comes Duskmane save switch, immediately answered with Rhyperior. Rhyperior is going to be firing off this Rock Wrecker. This is going to inflict some serious damage. Unfortunately, not enough to knock out. Duskmane is able to hang on, making one final charge attack, and it will be the Sunsteel Strike. So, a worthwhile shield for Rhyperior, especially with the final Pokemon in the back being revealed as Melmetal. And unfortunately, this Melmetal is going to be able to do absolutely nothing against this double ground backline of this team. Melmetal has farmed up a ton of energy. They go for the superpower. That's still not going to be enough to knock out, and they're forced to fire off another move as well. It's going to be the back-to-back superpowers. In comes Landorus. There's the switch into the Kyurem to snipe down the opponent's Kyurem. And from here, this is an extremely straightforward win. Firing off the Fusion Flare, opponent realizes there's just no hope, so they're not going to waste anyone's time, and they're just going to let that move through. Kyurem into Dialga, even with Dragon Breath, this is a bad lead. Safe switch into Rhyperior, opponent responds with a Palkia, and oh my goodness, going straight for the Rock Wrecker. If this Rock Wrecker lands, this Palkia is going to be in serious trouble, but it does not land. The opponent ends up committing the shield, and now things get a little bit uncomfortable. Rhyperior does win the 2 shield, going straight Breaking Swipe, but potentially trying to win the 1s there by landing a Rock Wrecker, so high risk, high reward, and unfortunately, as a result, not able to win Switch. But this will set up a pretty nice farm down for the Kyurem White, shielding up the Spatial Rend. Opponent is going to pivot out into Dialga. Dialga immediately Fusion Flared. This is going to hurt. The opponent knows it. They're going to give up the final shield. In comes Landorus. Landorus can't quite get to the Sandsear Storm before the opponent grabs the final shield. Now, as Landorus, how much do you choose to overfarm here? Landorus going to farm up just shy of the back-to-back 11 mud shots of energy, and Sandsear picks up the KO. The opponent still does have the Palkia, but the Palkia is very, very low. What is going to be that final Pokemon in the back? It's going to be a Kyurem Black, and unfortunately, the opponent does not time the catch correctly. Stone Edge connects. That's big damage. Kyurem Black gets farmed down by Kyurem White, and my goodness, there are so many top lefts by opponents in the footage so far. Kyurem White into Meloetta. This is not a great lead. Dazzling Gleam will hit for super effective damage, and we're going to see a nice catch and sneak, catching the Dazzling Gleam and getting a free Mud Slap on the Rhyperior. Rhyperior going to be answered by an opposing Rhyperior. No baits here, going to fire off the Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker is resisted, but it does do more damage. That is going to connect. Opponent going to look for a full farm down, and they exit with so much energy. This energy is going to be uncomfortable because neither one of these Pokemon really wants to take a Rock Wrecker. Tough call to make here. Committing the shield. It's going to be the double breaking swipe. That is unfortunate there, as the opponent making the smart play, which is locking in some damage, and they get a debuff as well. It's going to be Dialga, and this might actually be a playable game. Fusion Flare, going to get the shield back. In comes Landorus. Landorus answered with the Meloetta. The final shield comes up from Landorus. Landorus does get outpaced in this matchup, but it's using its final shield, so it will be able to apply a debuff onto the Meloetta. If there's a win con for the Landorus, it probably involves getting a Mud Shot farm down. It's going to be close though. The Meloetta, it gets the Psyshock every 5 quick attacks. Is it going to be possible? No, it is not. Unable to get that farm down, forced to fire off the Sandsear Storm. That's going to be shielded, and now the opponent will be able to pick up the KO onto the Landorus. Psyshock is going to KO. In comes Kyurem. Opponent brings in Dialga. It's a race to the finish, but Fusion Flare does not do enough damage here. Fusion Flare gets Dialga low, but just not low enough, and unfortunately that game will end in a loss because, man, that Meloetta was just slightly too bulky. Bad lead leading into Dialga. There's the safe switch into Rhyperior. Out comes Kyogre. Kyogre, definitely a Pokemon that you need to bait out here. Rock Wrecker is going to inflict some pretty solid damage. The opponent does leave with energy, but the good news is the energy is completely useless into the Kyurem. So the Kyurem now gets a very nice farm down of the Kyogre. This is a situation where Ice Fang would be a lot better because obviously Ice Fang is resisted. You would get a lot more farm than with neutral Dragon Breath. Opponent waiting the switch clock here is a pretty big surprise because they have switch advantage. In comes the Landorus, and Dialga is not switching out. That is a good sign that hopefully with Kyogre out of the way, Landorus may be able to sweep. Dialga, these Dragon Breaths not hitting as hard as they used to thanks to that Sandsear Storm. They're going to fire off an Iron Head. Landorus will look to overfarm slightly, so that way if the opponent lets it go, there will be some residual energy available. But they're not going to let it go. They're double shielding. It's got to be something weak, and it is. It's Duskmane in the back, and this game should just be a win. Sandsear Storm, massive damage onto the Duskmane. Duskmane farming up a ton of energy here. Landorus will be able to pick up the knockout onto the Duskmane, and then there's some energy available on the Kyurem. So even though the opponent's Dragon Breaths are back to full power, it's not gonna matter. The residual energy from farming down the Kyogre gets this Kyurem to the Fusion Flare and a win. Kyurem into Ho-Oh. This is a matchup where, honestly, Ice Fang and Dragon Breath, they're going to perform identically because the moves are basically clones of each other. Just one is 3-turn, one's 2-turn. We do see a nice catch, though, catching the Sacred Fire onto the Rhyperior. Rhyperior more than happy to absorb that damage. The opponent going to look to re-farm up quite a bit of energy, and now they're going to bring in their own Rhyperior. So the opponent has rebanked a Sacred Fire for later. Breaking Swipe when debuffed just does absolutely nothing. Oh my goodness. The opponent throwing energy is honestly amazing. That's a huge mistake by the opponent. The opponent, realistically here, should have just committed to the farm down because they're completely non-threatened by debuffed energy from a Rhyperior. But since they didn't commit to the farm down, now they're in a lot of trouble. They're answered with Landorus. Landorus, very comfortable tanking energy from this Rhyperior. Opponent gonna send out Kyurem, but thankfully it is not Ice Fang Kyurem White. It's gonna be Kyurem Black, and that's perfectly fine for Landorus. The opponent will fire off a move, but they don't have enough energy for a Freeze Shock. It's just a Fusion Bolt. Can Landorus get the farm down? No, but Landorus, even with a 0-bubbled Sandsear Storm, will be able to pick up the KO, and then it's going to be all up to Kyurem White. Kyurem White is going to get the farm down. In comes Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh now going to try and get that 50-50 Sacred Fire debuff. Do they get it? Yes, they do, but there's so much energy available on Kyurem White that even with that attack drop, the opponent is just not winning this game. They are losing so much health to these -1 Dragon Breaths, another Fusion Flare, another shield, but there's just no hope for the opponent at this point because Kyurem still has a shield to hide behind. Kyurem absolutely inevitable in this endgame. Even with all these debuffs, it's not going to matter. The opponent on 1 HP getting KO'd by a -2 Fusion Flare to secure the win. Dragon Breath Kyurem into Dialga, bad lead. Going to look to pivot out into Rhyperior. Opponent going to respond with their own Rhyperior. Now, honestly, having a bit of an energy head start here is nice because you get the first roll at the 50-50 attack drop, and the attack drop does come through, and that makes your life a lot easier in this Rhyperior mirror. The opponent doesn't get the debuff, and now Emmy should just be able to completely flip this matchup. Firing off the Breaking Swipe, that's going to connect. We see a second debuff as well. This poor opponent getting absolutely cooked by these debuffs. In comes Dialga. Oh, Rhyperior, that would have been diabolical if it got one final move, but it does not. In the back, it's Kyurem Black, and unfortunately, Kyurem Black is about to get fully Dragon Breath down by Kyurem White. Kyurem White committing the shield. Opponent went for the Hail Mary, going for the free shock, but it's just too little too late as Kyurem White puts up the shield. Didn't really have to throw the Fusion Flare there, but I guess just trying to preserve as much HP as possible against this Dialga. But Dialga, there's just no way it's ever surviving the Landorus. Landorus switches in as the opponent gets to fire off an Iron Head. Iron Head not going to be enough to KO here, so this is a pretty safe no shield from the Landorus. And now Landorus will get to debuff these Dragon Breaths with Sandsear Storm. Sandsear Storm is going to be shielded up, and Landorus, I'm not worried. It's getting there. The opponent realizes it as well, so they will concede the match. Kyurem into Xerneas. This is where Dragon Breath is so much worse. If you're going up against any fairy type, as oh my goodness, Rhyperior is met with the Landorus, everything's going wrong in this game. But this is where there's kind of some give and take with regards to the movesets on these Kyurems. Some people have been trying Dragon Tail on Kyurem Black, and they've been trying Dragon Breath on Kyurem White, and it's very much going to depend on the meta that you're seeing. If you're seeing a lot of fairy types, then Dragon Tail on Kyurem Black and Dragon Breath on Kyurem White are going to feel much, much worse. But if you're seeing a lot of opposing Kyurems and Palkia, then having a Dragon Fast move can honestly be a pretty nice plus. Here, Kyurem is going to get a farm down after shielding up the Stone Edge, but again, just having no fast move pressure into Xerneas is very unfortunate. In the back is going to be an opponent's Kyurem Black. Stone Edge is going to land, and that's some pretty significant damage. Landorus is going to have to do the lion's share of the work in this endgame. Free shock, no debuff comes through. Landorus will get a farm down, and now gets to apply debuffs to the Xerneas. But my worry is that this Landorus has taken too much damage, and that even a -1, a Moonblast will be able to KO. Landorus really needs to hang on here. Moonblast, it does KO, and that's unfortunately going to spell disaster, as the opponent is going to get a double up before Kyurem does. They are now at back-to-back close combats. Close combat number 1 connects, and there's close combat number 2. Got close to the double Fusion Flare, but couldn't quite get there, and that game will be a loss. Kyurem into Kyurem. Let's see if they are on Dragon Breath, and they are not. So let the farm commence. Kyurem going to fire off this Fusion Flare, looking to apply some pressure to the opponent. Opponent is going to commit the shield, and they're going to immediately return fire with a Fusion Flare of their own. I wouldn't be surprised to see a pivot out here from the opponent, and there it is. They're going to pivot into Rhyperior. Bit of an interesting play here. Emmy making the read that this is a Landorus bait out. After all, they have an Ice Fang user on the lead, and they save switch Rhyperior. So Emmy here is making the call that Landorus will be more useful in the back, and getting a lot of Breaking Swipe debuffs in the mirror definitely helps out, because now this Breaking Swipe will not KO, but this Breaking Swipe honestly might, because I don't believe it has been debuffed. This Breaking Swipe does pick up the KO, and in the back, it's going to be the opponent's Landorus. We're going to see a switch. Opponent trying to snipe down with Ice Fangs, but they are unsuccessful. In comes the Landorus, and this is going to be a bit of an interesting endgame. Obviously, it's going to be Landorus versus Landorus, but the big advantage is the Dragon Breath damage. You're just trying to get the opponent into a range where Stone Edge will KO, and even at -1, Stone Edge would KO here. The opponent trying to overfarm an amount of energy that will win them this game, but the truth is there's no amount of energy that will win them this game short of getting a full farm down. We move into the final match, and it's the exact same leads as last game with the exact same fast moves as well. So incredibly nice to catch the Ice Fang user on the lead. Fusion Flare, immediate pressure, and we do see a shield from the opponent. The opponent is going to be firing back with the Fusion Flare. Will we see a pivot out? Yes, we do. It's going to be into Duskmane. Duskmane answered with Landorus, and Duskmane, they are firing off what can only be an Iron Head or a Dark Pulse here. So that's very okay for Landorus. Landorus looking to massively overfarm and hoping that enough Mudshot damage is landed that this will KO. The Sandsear Storm is just enough to knock out. In comes Kyurem White, and one Ice Fang was not enough to KO, so the Sandsear Storm is reached. That's going to pick up the knockout. It's Dialga in the back, and unfortunately, it's all over for this opponent, as in comes Rhyperior, and it looks like the opponent is thinking about top lefting, or at least they did, but then they decided to keep going, so there was a little hiccup there from the Dialga, but Rhyperior can just farm all the way down in the ones. This is not even a remotely competitive matchup, and that is game over. All in all, I'm a big fan of people getting creative with the Pokemon and the movesets that they're using in the Go Battle League. So seeing someone run an anti-meta moveset like this, Dragon Breath on Kyurem White, and have success is something that I think is very cool. I did also see a few Japanese players as I was climbing towards Expert running Dragon Breath on Kyurem White. So it's cool to see a more extensive sample size here of we get to see 10 or so games, see the ups where it's doing very well in the mirror, and the downs where unfortunately it had a very tough time against Xerneas. Overall, personally, I still think that Ice Fang is going to be the way to go overall, as Ice Fang's neutral play is just absurd. But if you're on a team where you need coverage into opposing Kyurems and Palkia, but you don't necessarily want to use Dialga, then I think Dragon Breath Kyurem White is honestly a pretty solid option, because with Dragon Breath, it does just straight up defeat Palkia in evens. So overall, a pretty interesting option if you're wanting to switch it up from the standard moveset. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.